This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. We could all use more time. Amazon Business offers smart business buying solutions so you can spend more time growing your business and less time doing the admin. I can see why they call it smart. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com.
You call me a slut. Is that the best?
But I'm so sorry you get slut-shamed over this.
There are, of course, enough people like Chup Randi. Sex was like a duty or some kind of wifely obligation. I don't know, a chore. So when I used a toy for the first time, I was like, mind blown. There's something to be said for the energy of a woman who has let go of shame. You know, some parents will teach them shame. As a word for the genitals. Is that anything to teach a kid? Do people kill their kids? What is wrong with you people? Sometimes I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Something as silly as like women's nipples get censored, but men are allowed to show their bodies.
I honestly hated doing branded content. And like, who needs a whiter, tighter vagina? Actually, I don't use the word sex anymore. Now that the platforms are restricting the language and the content bucket so harshly, YouTube just age restricts a lot of my content automatically.
Based on what?
Its AI knows it's about sex. They don't give a fuck about sex ed. Meta doesn't care about sex ed. Is it really a coincidence that when the government was trying to ban abortion in the US is when sexual and reproductive health and rights content got penalized the most?
Does this impact your other sponsorships as well? Wait, so more men land up converting to sales?
Like Leeza just has a bunch of copycats.
Are there very many sex education content creators in the space?
If you're not that interested, what can I do?
Hi, and welcome to this episode of The Real Deal with me, Anam C. Today's episode is genuinely and absolutely eye-opening conversation. If content around sexual wellness and pleasures is something that has always made you curious, you've landed on the right video. I have Leeza Mangaldas on today's episode, and this conversation has been riveting from start to end, talking about her creator journey around this topic, as well as launching her own sexual pleasures brand. Don't miss a beat with this conversation because it really was such a good one. Let's get you started. Hi, Leeza. Welcome to my podcast, The Real Deal.
Hi, Anam. Thanks so much for having me.
I feel like as an introduction for you, there's so much to say because there's so much to unpack through this episode for me personally, even content creator, sex educator, now entrepreneur. What title do you like the most these days?
I'm not one for titles. Honestly, I'm just so lucky I get to live this life. Who'd have thought you could make a career in India talking about sex, writing about sex, liking sex, selling sex toys? Like, I am living my dream. And I never even knew that it would be my dream. It feels like an amazing adventure.
The best kind of accident.
Exactly.
Even though I'm someone that's quite vocal about women advocating for obviously their sexual choices of all types, I'm someone who, while working on like the notes for this podcast episode, was like, I'm going to be saying sex a lot. I hope I don't get conscious while talking to you, or like I don't want it to translate on camera, because even though one tries to, learn and unlearn, there's that little conditioning that pulls me back, I will admit, so many times where I'm like, do I want to talk about this? Do I want to ask her this? What if I make her uncomfortable by asking her this? So if I fumble a little bit, I'm giving you a disclaimer because I'm consciously trying to remind myself, even as we film, that I want to talk about it, but I also sometimes get conscious about it, which is such a weird thing. How do you break out of that? How do you not get conscious while creating content around and about sex, especially like you said in India, where one is rather more conservative with their choices and with how they especially say things online and on social media?
I feel like practice makes perfect. Just start talking about it. And then the more you talk about it, the easier. But just with anything, the first time you go swimming, it seems like, oh my goodness, like I could drown. And then the 500th time you go swimming, it's so enjoyable. You're in the water, you feel this cool water around you. So I really enjoy talking about sex now. And I think that most people actually do enjoy talking about these matters that are very precious and private, but that you feel you need to hide. When you find that there's a space where you're not being judged and someone's actually making you feel seen and understood, and you're not having to pretend or wear the masks society requires you to wear most of the time. Most people feel really fulfilled when they're able to have such a conversation, but they don't have the space or opportunity to. And so I like to create the space and opportunity to have those conversations. Because I think most people want to have them. It's not that we don't want to talk about sex. It's that we feel if we talk about sex, what will people think? What will others perceive of us, right? So the fear comes from actually an external fear rather than an internal lack of wanting to talk about it. And so you have nothing to worry about because I ain't judging. And I think I've talked about sex long enough that I don't think you're going to make me feel uncomfortable.
So typically with everything you're describing, I can only think of like 2 girl groups where we really talk about absolutely everything. For you, especially when it came to content, where did that start out? Where did you feel, okay, I want to push this boundary and say, I want to talk about sex, not just my sex life, like just sex as a topic in general. You even get into anatomy, and I've seen you
talk about my own sex life, actually. It's mainly anatomy and sexuality at large and stuff that would be sort of of use to a wide number of people, stuff that's factual rather than subjective for the most part, so that it's usable by the maximum number of people. On occasion, I might give an example of something either from people write into us. I share things anonymously. I think that's wonderful to like hear other people's stories. You don't feel as alone. Or I might even share something I've experienced, but more if it is useful to someone else. My desire is not to like shock and awe. Or, you know what I mean? It's not like, I did this. I actually wanted to like destigmatize sex and make it feel like something that you can talk about and something that is worth understanding and exploring with information rather than cluelessly. Because there's also risks to having sex, right? And if you don't educate about sex at all, you also end up with a whole bunch of young people who are very confused and very likely to make mistakes and take undue risks. Like there's so many ways to mitigate the risks of sex, whether it's unwanted pregnancy or an infection or even just rejection and heartbreak. There's lots you can do if you're informed to mitigate the severity, at least, of some of the risks that you have to take. But I think we never talk about it, so people don't even know. You know, so many people don't even know that they don't know. They might not know the question to ask, because how do you know the question if you've not even been allowed to think there is a question? You know what I mean? Yeah, and especially that now that you mention it, I'm also realizing you never sensationalize any topic in a way that seems shock and awe, but you make it seem so normal. The delivery of it is so normal is the only word that comes to mind. Thank you. That's my goal. And I agree that sometimes when you share things anonymously and I'm scrolling on stories and I'm like, you know what, that seems like something I could relate to, or that seems like a problem I know a friend is having. You know, like someone within the community of girls who do talk about these things amongst ourselves. I'm like, okay, this is when I'll share it with someone. But do you often also get, especially in the DMs, are you also getting backlash from people? Because again, mindset is such an issue when it comes to adapting to such content. Honestly, actually, there isn't hate. I think when you talk about politics or religion is when you get hate. So I have made the decision to refrain from talking about politics and religion. Maybe that's a bit cowardly of me, but you know, I value my safety, and I'm already talking about something that's a bit prickly. So maybe that's, I don't know, people, that's a battle I've decided to stay out of. So instead of, I think it's not so much hate. I don't get threats to my safety and things, thank God. I honestly don't think I have the stomach for that. I don't think I could do work where I felt like my health, well-being, and life was at risk. Like I'm just not cut out for that. Applaud people who do that, but it's not for me. So I'm mainly sharing factual information. Mainly people are like, thank you, Didi. I learned something. This was amazing. I think that people are much less likely to change their mind about something if you shout at them. Like I could be like, this is a trash opinion. You are trash. But I want these people to reconsider. You will only listen. The only people who listen will be those who already agree with you if you're presenting an opinion. Women should be allowed to have premarital sex, or women should enjoy sex. These are things that are subversive to a lot of people. A lot of people don't believe that women should be allowed to have sex before or outside of marriage in any context. What if you never want to get married? That's unacceptable to most people. Do you know what I mean? There's many ideas that I'm very gently trying to have a wider sort of subset of society pay heed to. But I think I have to do so in a way that's palatable. Or at least that's the way I've chosen to do this. Because if you are antagonistic in your approach, then only the people who already agree with you are cheering you on. How do you get the people who disagree with you to be like, wait a minute, she has a point, And so I try and be as friendly and gentle as I can in the dissemination of my information. And I think that is well received. So it's mainly love. I will get slut shamed. There are, of course, enough people like Chup Randi who, a woman who talks about sex is surely she's a slut. But honestly, you got to do better than that. I am not going to get offended. You call me a slut. Is that the best you can do? Seriously. Like I can handle that. So yeah, I don't know. Luckily, I think the pushback or resistance or things that people might expect I get, it isn't that, touch wood. I do not want to tempt fate. But so far, it's been mainly positive. And I think that's because it's hard to disagree with facts.
But I'm so sorry you get slut shamed over this, because I feel like now in this day and age, in our generation, one would hope that the internet is more used to women saying whatever they want to say. And I mean that in a very non-controversial way, where like, no matter what you say, let's say, even if it's not fact, let's say you are talking about a personal experience, you're talking about your personal experience. Nobody else should have a say on how you get to deliver it. And I also wonder, would it be fair to assume you did not have reluctance from family considering the Indian context of everything?
Oh yeah, I lucked out in the family department. I think it would be much harder to do this if I had a resistance from within my own family. And maybe that's what stops a lot of people from talking about such topics. Actually, it definitely stops people. I think many people aren't afraid of trolls. They're afraid, what will my mom think, dad think, father-in-law think, brother think, whatever. So I have zero resistance in my household. I'm not married. So yeah, but I plan on ensuring that whoever my partner is also extremely supportive of my work. But my parents, extremely supportive. Like I never had to, they are so completely on board with the fact that sex education is important. And I was lucky to grow up in a household where talking about these things, like if I had a question about sex, I would have asked my parents without at all feeling hesitant. So
that's awesome. I don't know about scared, but like for sure, I wouldn't be comfortable talking about my sex life on social media in any context, let alone in getting into facts. And you're right. Some of that does come from family conditioning, that it would make them uncomfortable or it would offend them. So yeah, it's great that you did have family support, and that is a very big advantage for sure. Are there very many sex education content creators in the space? Because I feel like I can barely think of one other name or two at best.
There's a fair number globally, and there's a few in India. I think there's a combination of like a bunch of different types of approaches exist. There's like the doctors who talk about sexual health. Then there's like the activists, artists, writers, people who are approaching sexuality, and it's typically women or queer people, via the lens of lived experience and identity or academic study of gender and sexuality, that sort of lens. I think there's also some people who are working in public health, like with UNFPA, or other such, health and rights organizations. And then there's also the sort of femtech, sex tech ecosystem of brands and services and products providing solutions in this space, and that also fund a lot of education in this space. So when I'm so embedded in this niche that I think I know or follow a huge number of the niche globally. But if you're not embedded in this niche, it can seem like there's very few. There's definitely not enough people doing this work. Because I think we should be shouting this from the rooftops, but there's still so many barriers to doing the work, right? One, your own family and ecosystem might not be supportive of it. Two, the platforms don't incentivize the creation of this content. Like let's say a YouTube or something has inbuilt monetization possibilities for creators so that you can earn something for all this time you're spending making your content. They will demonetize sex ed, they will take it down, restrict it, shadow ban it, block it, So unfortunately, the ecosystem itself, the digital ecosystem has made it, I think, less and less inviting to creators interested in exploring sexuality in their content. So why would people do it then? There was a time when it was like kind of booming during the pandemic. I feel like a lot of people started talking about this stuff and then petered out a bit.
So I definitely want to talk about censorship because I feel like that is something I've seen you talk about on like your stories as well. I've seen others talk about it. Is there no way to appeal to the apps, especially because I feel like there is such a large conversation around this topic around sex globally, like you said, not just in India. I'm something as silly as like women's nipples get censored, but men are allowed to show their bodies. Like it's almost like we're sex. And I'm talking about topics like breastfeeding because I'm currently in that zone of my life where I've looked up like breastfeeding topics and things like that, and I'm like, it's all blur, it's fine, doesn't matter to me. But women's bodies are censored on a topic like breastfeeding, which is not to be sexualized at all. You're literally feeding your child versus men doing anything they can do. So like, how does one navigate this, especially when it comes to, let's say, visual content? You may obviously not be doing it, but like if there's graphics that are to be shown, sex education, especially when you're catering to late teens, early 20s, I would assume. How does one combat that?
It is complicated. So, I understand the platforms are trying to keep content safe to view for a very wide range of cultural sensibilities globally, as well as a relatively wide range of age groups, although there is a minimum age. I believe most of the content I put out is actually okay for older teenagers to watch. You can't be a small child on Instagram. I think the cutoff point is like 14 or 13 or something like that. And anyway, they can also age restrict content or try and serve. They're smart enough at this point with AI to do a better job of identifying content made for adults and versus children. YouTube also, you can even self-check. On YouTube, it asks you, this is not made for kids, right? And I always say, this is not made for kids. Or we would never serve ads for Leezas to under 21. So there's many ways to do this more efficiently than they're currently doing it. But right now, actually, it's like a rabbit hole if you want to deep dive into censorship. And it's interesting you mentioned breastfeeding because with community guidelines, so no nudity is allowed. And that's fine. I get that because I guess you're trying to prevent, revenge porn, those types of things. And the stakes tend to be higher for...
What's revenge porn?
When like you send a partner a nude and then after you break up, they're like pissed off at you and they put it on the internet.
Okay.
Something like that, where the misuse of people's personal and private imagery is so... is a rampant thing already. And then on social media platforms, how do they make sure that any kind of nudity, whether it's artful or you've just decided to put it of yourself or someone else has, how does Instagram know? So to prevent the descent, and also maybe they don't want, pornography is also, the legal status of that in different countries varies. This platform is accessible everywhere. So they try and prevent pornography and the solicitation of sex. The legality around those things varies from place to place. I get that. I mean, there's a whole other conversation to be had about those two subjects, I guess, but that's not the conversation we're having right now. So I get why their community guidelines primarily tried to prevent those two things. And those were in place from the beginning. So there was no nudity and no sexual solicitation. And female nipples, which is such an arbitrary thing, became we don't allow female nipples or butt cracks. Or they had to really, because what is nudity? It's funny how it's not nudity if you have these small bits covered. What is nudity is also a funny question to ask. But breastfeeding technically is allowed on Instagram. And so today, OnlyFans models are there with their tits out with a baby doll, pretending to be breastfeeding to solicit subscriptions because they can't do so straightforwardly. I mean, so there's all these horny men saving breastfeeding videos, which is, when you think about it, is that really better or worse than just allowing for adult content to be marketed to adults? You think about the ways people sidestep censorship, and sometimes it's even worse than just allowing them to do what they wanted to do. With sex ed, I think the shift, there was a time when you could say whatever, all my content was totally fine on Instagram when I started. I mean, that's how I got to the community I have today. It was actually God, time flies. But when Trump first got elected and began cracking down on women's reproductive health and rights, trying to ban abortion, cracking down on trans people's rights, all of this stuff. They will not directly make that claim, Meta. I don't see them. But we've seen all of the tech billionaires pander to Trump all through this election also. I get the sense that the political shifts we see are then also impacting policy shifts at these platforms. These are American platforms. Is it really a coincidence that when the country was when the government was trying to ban abortion in the US is when sexual and reproductive health and rights content got penalized the most. Like saying abortion, posts about abortion gets taken down all the time. And Meta decided this was sensitive content. So instead of taking it down, what they'll do is say your account can't be shown to non-followers and it will not appear in search or explore unless you delete all this content. So it's almost like we will make you censor yourself. So then it takes them off the hook. They don't seem like the really bad guys because they're not taking down the content, but they're telling you basically no one's going to see your content unless you get rid of all these posts.
And growth goes for a toss.
So this happens to us all the time, anyone who's doing sex ed content, and particularly around you're totally right, women's reproductive rights, pleasure, anything to do with women and queer people is much, much, much more censored than men's health or like Viagra is okay, vibrators are not.
Which is really weird because one would assume talking about a topic like sex would lead to faster growth because people, anything that people assume is sensational and should be hush-hush, one would assume is actually getting seen more. Because like we discussed earlier, we're not actually talking about sex openly, not on the internet, not about our own sex lives. And so it's one of those things where one would go and click the follow button more because you are talking about it and they want to know about what others are doing via your stories and things like that. But they're actually hampering the growth by going around this entire censorship.
They make it really hard to reach new people. Lately, for 3 or 4 years now, they've made it near impossible. Actually, I don't use the word sex anymore. I haven't said sex on my page.
You use ghapa.
Exactly. I don't.
Which is the cutest silver lining to this cloud, I have to say.
Self-censorship is really the only workaround at this point how do I exist on this platform and still get reach people and still talk about this thing that so many people came here for without being able to say the words. I can't say penis, vagina, intercourse. I can't say intimacy, pleasure. You can't even use eggplant and water droplet emojis and things like that. AI is smart. It understands innuendo even. Sexual suggestiveness even is something it can pick up on. So I have to come up with the really innocuous words and hope people get the point. And the thing is, people get the point.
Yeah, give me your words.
I also just take down content all the time because at least it came, you saw it, maybe it conquered, maybe it didn't, but some people at least saw it. So if they flag it, I just take it. I've made peace with the fact that my whole feed is basically stories. Here today, gone tomorrow.
Give me your set of words. I know you use ghapa for sex.
Yeah, ghapa for sex. I say banana or kitty cat. Or other such euphemisms for genitals, even though I really wanted to destigmatize the scientific language. But what are you going to do, Or sometimes you just have silly euphemisms based on the context of things. And then I guess it lends itself to humor and people kind of laugh. Or maybe also people find it less confronting. Maybe if you're watching a reel and your mom's next to you or something, at least she's not the penis. And she just said the banana or I don't know, your ding dong or something,
Yeah.
So I understand that maybe even for viewers, it is actually somewhat easier to consume this information if keywords are not being... Maybe this slightly covert approach actually makes the content more palatable. I wonder if that is the silver lining. But I also think by saying the words, you make them feel less stigmatized.
Yeah.
If we continue to believe that these words are unspeakable and I have to actually perpetuate that idea because my hands are tied, that is a regret of mine,
No, don't have it as a regret. I get the intention that you're trying to do it with. And I agree with you so much because the number of people who ask me, did you have a normal birth? Did you have a normal birth? I'm a C-section is not an abnormal birth. Let's not invalidate.
Say vaginal delivery.
Yeah. So I keep saying I had a vaginal delivery. Yes, I had a vaginal delivery. Till someone asked me why do you keep saying that? I'm because also it normalizes a body part that doesn't have to be thought of in a way that is so hushy. Also, giving birth to a child is the most natural thing. It's not sexual in any way in this context. And also, I don't want to completely invalidate by saying this is normal and this is I'm basically implying a C-section birth is not normal when I'm saying I had a normal birth.
Exactly.
So I'm why would I do that to someone else if they had a C-section delivery? That's not okay.
Yeah, totally. And also why have so much discomfort even around sex? You can't say vaginal... firstly, everything's not sexual, but also if just because something's sexual doesn't mean it's bad, shameful, or dirty or anything. You know what I mean? Like sex is not that big a deal. I feel like we need to rid sex of some of its power that makes us think we can't talk about it and we're bad if we talk. Like actually, if you just like, it is just one more part of life, and it's like talking, you know, you can talk about food, or you can talk about your any other aspect of health, eye health or something, without like, you know, getting your knickers in a twist. I think like ideally we should be able to talk about these body parts and even about sex without thinking of it as this bad, dirty thing. And as soon as that shame, if you can rid yourself of that shame, actually the whole thing becomes the shame gives it power, you know?
Yeah. The silver lining I want to actually go to is, of course, the ghapa ghap of it. And I want to admit that it does make listening to it a little bit less intimidating. And I say that as someone who doesn't always have AirPods on. I say that as someone who doesn't mind consuming it with the actual words and is not necessarily looking for the code words that you've come up with. But I can imagine a lot of people finding it, like you said, while sitting next to their family member, something that won't, you know, scare off a mom sitting next to her teenage daughter or, you know, daughter in her 20s. And the reason specifically I wanted you to mention those code words is because I'm hoping that when you guys go follow her on Instagram after this, you can make sense immediately of what that is. So you've kept it simple, which is really nice. What else can someone who is looking to start creating sex education-based content on Instagram do to really make things simple? I'm coming from the point of view that we have potentially a lot of people who want to get into content creation. Let's say there is someone out there who's also qualified to be in this space and wants to be able to do similar work as you have. How do they arrive at where you are?
So it's definitely harder to do this now that the platforms are restricting the language and the content bucket so harshly. So I would say you got to be clever from the get-go. I think there's a huge opportunity to do sex ed in more languages. I think like AI censorship is at its most effective with English. It is slightly less effective in the more obscure the language, the less reliable information there is in it also, because the internet, there's so much English language content, and there's some stuff in maybe let's say in Hindi, there might be some stuff, but there's less and less and less the more regional you go. And there's huge demand for it. We're such a huge country and we have so many languages. Like I would love to see really high quality, scientifically accurate, judgment-free sex ed in Tamil and Bengali and Gujarati and like whatever, you know, we have tons of languages, right? And you don't see that as much. And I understand that it's hard for people to do this work because, as we were saying, what's your family going to think? What's someone else going to think? But if you can do this work, and if you do speak more than one language, make it in all the languages you speak. Like one of my huge regrets is I don't speak any other language properly. And I think now there's even AI tools to help with that. And I'm sure, unfortunately, the censorship will reach every language. But right now, it's still not that good in language outside of English and maybe to some extent Hindi. But even Hindi is less efficiently censored than English. And I think there's such demand for it. There's such demand for it. Do you know? And but do your homework also. Like I think there's so much misinformation and sort of just like sensationalist information out there too, that if you're going to do sex ed, it better be scientifically accurate and it better be judgment free. And like, you need to be accountable for what you put out.
Do you think that the subscription models on Instagram, it's called subscribe, and then on YouTube, it's memberships. Do you think those models would help in surpassing these censorship tools and just being able to make like just proper educational content without all of these issues?
I don't think even I'm not entirely sure because I haven't used subscription or memberships that much. I don't use membership on YouTube at all. And I just recently started to play around with subscription on Instagram. But I think that, as far as I understand, their guidelines are their guidelines. I believe that there are platforms which are okay with NSFW content like Reddit and Substack and things like that, where like I've started writing long form essays on Substack, exploring a theme or topic or whatever, something I get asked questions about in an uncensored way, in that at least I'm using language that's straightforward, because on Substack you can. But I think a certain type of person is readerly and interested in reading like a 1,500 word essay. More people are willing to watch a 30-second video. You know what I mean? So then you're reaching a slightly different and smaller audience, perhaps, although maybe there's some overlap, and it depends, right? If you're not that interested, what can I do? But there are formats outside of Instagram that you can explore for more uncensored stuff. I'm not sure if memberships and subscriptions really allow how uncensored you can be there.
The reason I'm asking that is because when you do subscriptions or memberships on YouTube,
It's opt-in.
It's not even opt-in. It's pay. There's a paywall. You have to say you're over 18.
But do you have to say over 18?
Yeah. For subscription on YouTube, you do. For membership on YouTube, you do. Like even for, I subscribe to just YouTube Premium, and I think I pick an over 18 thing. I think I should double check that, because now I'm suddenly like, wait, am I remembering correctly?
YouTube just age restricts a lot of my content automatically.
Based on what?
Its AI knows it's about sex. I will also say this is not for kids, but honestly, the age restriction is something, I don't know, I think most of my content's okay for like 16 plus. I say it's not for kids, but they will still restrict any vibrator themselves. Automatically, it'll be like, we have age restricted your content as we do not find it appropriate for. In which case, it's not going to show up, and you have to be signed into YouTube to watch it.
Got it.
Yeah. So I imagine, maybe with membership, I don't know. Probably you're right. Probably with membership content. But maybe I'm not even eligible for membership because of the nature of the content. I don't know.
That's interesting. Even when I upload videos on YouTube, I have to click not made for kids myself, because it is literally not made for kids.
What they mean, is mine.
Yeah. So what they mean by that is just in general, it does not directly cater to children.
Exactly.
But this is such a huge bump in the road of trying to grow this content globally, not just in India. B, which I'm sure also makes it difficult for you to market your brand then, because Leeza's is, you said, almost 2 years old, right? And then is it difficult to market a product dedicated towards its pleasure toys essentially, and you're trying to tell people what exactly the product does so they can potentially buy it? Then if you can't talk about pleasure and you're getting censored so heavily, how are you bridging that gap?
Exactly. It is really, really tricky. But my big advantage is that I already have a significant community that I've built over almost a decade of doing this work. For brands starting today in the space without a community, like, it is going to be really hard. So I feel like I created this brand not because I always wanted to make a brand. I actually never, ever knew or thought that I'd run a business. Like, really didn't actually think in this lifetime that was part of my path. The reason I co-founded this brand with my dear friend and now co-founder Hannah is because my community would ask me every time I posted. I was one of the first people on the Indian internet to talk about sex toys because they changed my life, genuinely. Like, my own orgasms were so mysterious to me. I really didn't know that it was so easily and consistently possible for me to experience such incredible pleasure. Like, it's really not that easy with a man. And if you don't know what brings you pleasure, it's much harder to communicate and allow for the circumstances with your partner to lend themselves to your pleasure, because he doesn't know and you don't know. And then that's most young people's experience of women's pleasure. It's a bit like hit or miss. Like, maybe today, it feels like a happy accident if you have an orgasm. And now you can it's like Maggie noodles, dude. 2 minutes every time, whenever I want. I swear to God. And so when I used a toy for the first time, I was like, mind blown. And I didn't even know that I didn't know. It was part of why I started doing the sex ed on Instagram. I was like, if me, with all my privilege, education, and I have had so much gifted to me on a platter in life to help make it possible for me to have good sex. And I too spent 10 years being sexually active before I realized what it takes to make me orgasm or bothered to use a toy. I also thought, I don't need toys. I have a boyfriend. Or I don't know, weird girls use toys or whatever, before I used one myself. And I was just like, wow, I was so wrong, firstly. I can't believe I missed out on all of this. And I didn't even know I didn't know. It was like third eye-opening experience. So I literally, one of my first ever YouTube videos, I didn't even have Instagram back then because Instagram was not video, it was photo when it started. And I was like, I never masturbated and then I used a sex toy. My life has changed. Like, you guys, if you're a woman, you try a toy. It was like, I felt like I needed to shout it from the rooftops. That's how transformative it was for me. And then many people resonated with the content, I think, and would ask, where do you get one? And then, where can we? And I talked about lubricant as well, because it's also a product that I've really benefited from. It makes sex so much more comfortable. Such a simple and cost-effective fix for any kind of pain or discomfort during sex. And people would be, where do we get good lube? And, I'd always say, when you're traveling, screw the handbags and the shoes, like buy toys and lube. Or like if you have a cousin, friend, or anyone visiting, tell them to get you these things because they weren't available here. But like I've never had an orgasm, and does sex hurt were two of the most common questions I'd get.
I'd never had an orgasm was from women.
From women. Yeah, I'm like married 10 years, never had an orgasm. I have 2 kids, never had an orgasm. I don't think I've ever had what does orgasm feel like? You say sex is pleasurable. What are you talking about? You know, like there were so many women who just had not experienced pleasure during sex. Sex was like a duty or some kind of wifely obligation. I don't know, a chore or it was okay. Like they were like, it's nice, but like I'm not seeing stars, you know? And so I think that it came from like, why aren't there toys here already or lubes here already that I can recommend? I'm just let's bring the toys and lube that I would use to my community, you know? That's how otherwise, I mean, running a business is not for the faint-hearted. And honestly, you have to do so much. I wish that I just had an impact investment project. Ki paisa le lo, and just give people the toys. I would love to airdrop toys so that every woman could just have one. That's not how business works. And to make a sustainable business is a lot of hard work. I would not have done this for any other product. Like if you told me sell shampoo tomorrow, I'd be like, no. So yeah, I just want women to have orgasms. And we also make toys for men. I want everyone to have orgasms. But men play such an important part in this journey. Because in India particularly, a woman is much more likely to have a toy if a man buys her one. Male partner plays a very significant role in access. A woman is much more likely to visit a gynecologist or to use condoms, or if the man
you can curse, it's fine.
if the man helps out, you know, that's how little agency we have. While you live with your parents, they police your life. So what if your parents find your vibrator or find your condoms or find out you went to the gynac? And and then it's assumed you're going to get married. What kind of girl doesn't get married? And then you get married, and then your husband has to you have to have his approval to have any agency around your own sexual and reproductive health, you know? So they play an important role. They have to be allies. They have to get on this bandwagon with us and ensure that sex feels good and that we're safe and that we get, you know, they stand to play, like the ticket is in their hands in one way. I wish it wasn't, but that's how it is. And so we make toys for men too, because so many men think, you know, I'll get replaced by a toy. Or like, if my wife uses a vibrator, like she won't need me anymore. It's like, no, there's toys for all of you. You can also have a toy. It's just more fun to be had for everyone.
Wait, so more men land up converting to sales for Leezas, even if it means they're gifting it to the women in their lives. But what about your follower base demographically on your page? Do you mean that you have more women following you there, but more men buying it?
I think actually there's more men everywhere. I have about a 60-40 gender split even on my page with more men than women. But I think there's 2 reasons for that. One is that the Indian internet, only 1 in 3 internet users are women. So if you're more general in your content, like whether you're an entertainer, educator or something, as long as, I think like with fashion and beauty, often there's a more direct, because it's really, the clothes aren't wearable by most men, or you know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, with general content, it often has slightly more men. But I think also with sex, particularly, there's more men, because good girls shouldn't know about sex. They shouldn't ask about sex. What if their mom sees, or like some uncle sees that they follow me? And also men I don't know, you know, when you comment on a sex ed post, unfortunately, men are so terribly behaved. Lots of men will follow you and enter your DMs and thinking like, people are so quick to make judgment that unfortunately women self-censor. Right? I think there's more men who feel free enough to ask how to make a woman orgasm than there are women Googling that question. So many women will say like they discovered my page through their boyfriend or some cousin or like a male person sent them a video of mine. Because I think more men feel entitled to information about sex than women do. That's not to say no women do. Of course, I have a significant female follower community as well, but there are more men. And I would say, by and large, men just have so much more agency accessing products, information, or any kind of sexual thing, you know?
With no judgment.
Yeah.
Wait, so still answer me this. How are you marketing your product with all of that censorship? Like, how are you going about it?
We have to self-censor. We only show the box or put emojis on key parts of the product. You got to be really clever about it. Honestly, I have to be like a marketing Firstly, you got to just be relentless. Like your ads are going to get rejected. You got to just keep making lots of ads and hope that like some of it gets through. And also, we self-censor. Like I don't show the product. You'll just see the box or some kind of hook, or like you have to kind of really be covert about it. But because I have this large community that know my work and that are familiar with what I've been doing, and I think if you're willing to let your content get flagged, you just have to take it down after a while. Your people who do follow you do see it. So it's not reaching new people. But so every time we launch a new toy, I will show the toy and then I take down the reel later. But at least my existing community remains the like first point of contact to learn about anything happening at Leeza's, and they're mainly excited because it's such a new and interesting product category at large. Like I'm really proud that we're among the category creators. You know, if you want to learn about sex toys, like Leeza's and my page are a good place to learn because there's not that much out there in India in this space.
When it's content related to sex, do you feel like you face least resistance on Instagram stories or reels or YouTube? I want to include YouTube in the conversation as well. Even if it gets demonetized, are they taking it down the way Instagram is taking it down?
See, Instagram makes you take it down, no?
Sorry, say again?
Instagram makes it, you'll get this notification saying your account status is restricted. Your content cannot be shown to non-followers unless you delete the following content. And it'll flag all the content that it believes is sensitive. So technically, it's unless you flout community guidelines, which is all that nudity, sexual solicitation, which none of my content does, it won't take it down. It will make you take it down. It'll be like, you want new people to see, you want to show up in search? Delete all of this. Then on YouTube, it demonetizes and age restricts and sometimes also takes down. And sometimes also will, actually not sometimes, all of these platforms will limit the organic reach. So by saying you can't show up and explore and search, basically no one will stumble upon you, right? And now no one will even find you if they search for you. Like if they just search Leeza, normally Leeza Mangaldas will pop up as an auto suggestion. If your account is restricted, you will not show up, even for those who are looking for you. So it's almost like, okay, then we're going to just leave you in this silo here until you clean up your page because we don't want this shit on our app.
Like, you know what I mean? Timeout.
A bit like a timeout. I mean, it's like I guess your existing followers might get served some of your content, but in general, AI is so clever today that it can choose, things like wedding announcements and baby announcements get amplified. Things like a post about abortion get much less reach. This is not coincidence. This is by design. And when you read about, there's a book called Careless People, which shows the Meta employee, the whistleblower wrote this book. I don't know if you read it, but there's like all kinds of horrendous things these people have done to amplify certain things and silence other things. And there's a lot of they've had impacts on elections, right? Sex ed is one small. They don't give a fuck about sex ed. Meta doesn't care about sex ed. They're willing to throw this under the bus because it's more important for them to toe the line on so many other fronts. And this is like no man's land for them, So yeah.
Wait, so does this impact your other sponsorships as well? What I mean to say is, do you sometimes have a brand that will come to you and say, I want to work with you as a creator, irrespective of Leeza, who is just generally as a creator, but they'll be like, okay, but we don't want it to be too sexual, or we don't want it to be like, do you face those issues? Like if a beauty brand came to you, for example, how are you navigating?
I honestly hated doing branded content. And
said no creator ever.
I think they all hate doing it though. But you got to pay your bills.
Bills.
So I have done branded content in the past as well. But I had a job for most of the time that I was a creator. So I made my money as a TV presenter and did the content on the side. Then I quit TV and then started my brand. And if the brand really aligns with me, I will do it. But I had this rule early on that if I wouldn't use the product myself, I'm not going to promote it.
Of course.
But like many people don't have that rule. And I use very few products. So for the most part, I just don't. And I also, running Leeza's takes so much out of me and takes so much time. And I'm also talking about those products so much to my community that I have tried to make a conscious effort to do almost no branded content. Lately, especially in the last 2 years, I think it really has to be of interest to me to do like something I would do because I love it rather than because just time-wise, money-wise, and I don't want to keep selling to my audience, especially something that I can't actually stand for. So, I don't know. I haven't had that problem because my problem right now has been one of bandwidth, and I've just been like, oh, guys, I can't do this right now. But I think that with with a creator like me, it's mainly brands also marketing in this space that would approach me, right? Beauty and fashion brands are less likely to interact with me. Oh, on Women's Day, they all want to be with me. But like the rest of the year, it's more pharmaceutical, like brands making, lubricants, sanitary napkins, some kind of other products which often very dubious sexual wellness products. Like I would never market a vaginal whitening or tightening product or like some penis enlargement cream. Half of this stuff is preying on people's insecurities, doesn't even work. And like, who needs a whiter, tighter vagina? What are we talking about here, man? Like ban your product, So I think there's a lot of like really problematic stuff in this space also. And I would never endorse that stuff. So yeah, I don't think I haven't encountered that issue.
As a community though, does the sexual content creator community get sponsorships based on this? Or is it just like you said, Women's Day and only feminine hygiene products?
I've worked with some fun partners. Like I've worked with Google and Netflix and Tinder. Those were, right up my alley, really nice to partner with. And I think that, look, I think different creators will say yes and no to different things. For me, I was quite clear from the beginning that I didn't want to have to rely on branded content to make a living because, maybe when you're doing makeup and fashion, the stakes are less high. You're not recommending something you have to be accountable for beyond a point when you're like, I like this t-shirt. Okay. I cannot in good conscience recommend some sort of product that you have to either ingest or apply or use in your most private areas or whatever. If I haven't tried it, if I don't know that it works, and if it's preying on your insecurity, like the stakes, and if it doesn't even do what it says it'll do, like there's just so much that room for, the credibility you've worked so hard to build to be eroded because you needed money. And so you said yes to some brand deal. Yeah. And I never wanted to be in that position. And I think it is precarious. When you're a creator, you are trying to earn a living doing this thing. So then I understand also that there might be a creator who really needed to pay rent this month. And so they said yes to a brand deal, even though they hate that product or it's a shitty product, but they needed the money because now their life depends, like their income is coming from this. And people make those choices all the time. You see people endorse products they would never use because they need the money. I understand that decision the creator's making, but I really think don't make content creation your income stream then. Try and have some other thing, because if it's like between you and that paycheck and you have to sell to your audience stuff you cannot in good conscience sell, that's not a good place to be, man. And your audience sees through that also,
Yeah.
So I kept my job as long as I needed to, because I did not want to be in a position where I had no money and had to say yes to a brand deal. I don't think brand deals are a good way to like peg your whole lifestyle, especially if you're in these niches like sexual health, mental health, financial information, any kind of health, anything where what you're saying really impacts people's lives.
Yeah.
I feel like with fashion or something, okay, man, like, I don't know how badly you can influence somebody if you told them to buy a pair of pants.
Yeah, I get it. Do you then, safe to assume, obviously 100% of your revenue comes from Leezoos now, because you've also left your brand and you're not doing brand sponsorships as a creator?
I'm avoiding brand sponsorships as far as possible, and I draw a salary from Leezoos as any employee would.
So you obviously have some kind of limitation on the marketing for Leezoos because you were doing everything online. Do you partake in any offline methods on promoting your products? Because that would be more helpful, no sponsorship, and you want to be able to tell people exactly what your products do.
Well, we do some offline stuff. I think, although there's the marketing restriction, I think myself and my brand are in a very good position to deal with them. Do you know what I mean? Compared to competition, I think we have because I'm a content creator and because this is not just a business for me. It comes from such a deep sense of passion and purpose. You really have to have the stomach for this. Like if you don't actually care about sex toys and pleasure and sex ed, you shouldn't start a sex toy brand. It's not for the faint-hearted. There's so much, it's such a restricted space that if you don't actually care, you'd be better like go sell toothpaste or something, man. So I think that the fact that it means so much to me, and I've been doing this for so long, trying to find ways to say what I want to say because I really want women to have orgasms, and men will help us get there also. They're coming along. It comes from such a place of like deep purpose for me that I think that that's my biggest superpower. Like Insta censorship ain't got nothing on my passion and purpose, but if you don't have that, then it's no fun running against a brick wall every day. So I will say that this is not an easy space to start a business in. And there's many other things you could do that are easier. Like, it's not for the faint-hearted. And I also think that with regard to in-person events and things, you reach such a small number, right? I can reach 100 people maybe in an in-person event. I can reach millions of people in a video. So I don't think offline events will ever replace the need for the online stuff. And it's amazing what all you can convey without using this. Like, once you wrap your head around it, because I've really made it my mission to figure out how to communicate about this without breaking the rules. And I feel like I have found ways. It's annoying to have to do it that way, but people do sex is such a human thing that people understand. Like, people know. You can even have no words and people will like get it. So I think that, and it's fun to tap into that because I think there's a humor about it that it makes people smile when you didn't have to say anything and they still understood. And I also think that by, we're in quick commerce, we're in Blinkit, things like that, which allows for people to imagine you can buy sex toys with your atta and your bananas. Like, this is amazing.
Your banana with your banana.
Exactly. What a time to be alive. What a time to be an Indian consumer. In 10 minutes with your atta. Like, this is, and I never thought I'd live to see the day.
It's a lot of control you're giving people also from the point of view of anonymity, right? Because you're like right there. It's getting delivered.
And even from our website, our products come in a very simple e-commerce box without our branding on the outside. It's only on the inside packaging. So because discretion is really important to people, we value people's privacy. But yeah, with quick commerce, you can even make sure it's you at the door, receiving your parcel or whatever. I wish we lived in a world where you could have like a pink glitter box that said like orgasms await you. But since we have to be a bit sensitive to the fact that there's others in the environment that might not be so celebratory of your orgasm journey, we support you with very discreet packaging. And quick commerce makes it even easier.
Is it difficult to hire in this space?
It's hard to find people with prior experience because there's only so few players in the space and they've only been around for such a little time. But I think there's so many people who want to be part of the journey. And I think, again, having a community that I can, like, whenever I want to hire, I post on my stories or post on LinkedIn. There's so many people who are passionate about what I've been building. And I think that means so much to me. Like, it makes me so happy that there are people who want to be part of this journey and story. But yeah, it's hard to find people with like, I wish I could find someone who'd already built a sex toy brand, or who'd been like in the D2C space and sex toys for the last 10 years. That I'm not going to find. Or like a manufacturer who's been making sex toys in India for 30 years. We're going to probably be among the first people to try to make sex toys in India, So it's early days, but I'm so proud we get to be category creators.
Of course. And is it good within the community to give each other advice on, kind of you discuss things? Because I know in the creator community, that's become quite big where we discuss things, figure better ways of how we can grow. Are the brands very competitive? Because in the beauty brand space also, brands are competitive, but I would say still there is a little bit of friendliness there. I don't know whether it's because mine is a creator brand or not. But I do sometimes get good advice from CMOs and CXOs in general from other beauty brands. So is it like a good community or is it very competitive because it's such a niche?
I think it's such a niche, which does, I think when something's really small, there tends to the sense of like, it tends to be a bit more. I try not to be that way, but I think it's some founders are really lovely and like I believe that the expansion of the category is going to benefit. I personally believe the work I do benefits everybody. I'm educating about the clitoris and it reaches 10 million people. Anyone selling a clitoral toy is benefiting, okay? And all these people used to anyway reach out to me as an influencer to work with their brands. I've spoken to most founders in the space and been very generous with whatever I've learned from having access to such a large amount of information coming from people, So I don't know, I'm very open to talk to whoever, but I think some people are a bit prickly and, whatever. I don't know. It is how, even I'm sure influencers who are like lovely about everything and then some who are a bit weird just because you're also an influencer or whatever, right? It's like that in when I was a TV presenter, there were presenters who were lovely and others who were like really weird about, I don't know, just being like seeing you as a threat. I personally think when within a field, there's so much You can't be crabs in a bucket. Like, you are so much stronger together, especially in a marginalized field. Like, dude, we got customs to fight. We got restrictions to fight. We should bandy together, because we're going to need to lobby for ourselves instead of thinking of us as the bad guy. Like, no, Meta is the bad guy. The obscenity law is the bad guy. The other sex toy brand is not the bad guy. But I think one really annoying thing in the brand space in India is that very few people do anything original. Most people just copy something that's already doing well. And I think, so we've been, like, Leeza just has a bunch of copycats. And I mean, imitation's the highest form of flattery at one level. And so I'm like, well, at least, cool, I guess. But it would be fun if you just thought it for yourself and did something of your own. I think so many people enter a space with no interest in the space. They just see that a product has a lot of traction. And so then they want to just sell that same product. They probably also have some random, they're not even trying to build a brand. It's like a dupe model. We'll just dupe whatever is doing well in various spaces and put those on Amazon or Blinkit or whatever. And I think that I can understand the frustration people feel around that, you do all the work and the R&D and the testing and the designing and the marketing and the packaging, and someone else just like copies your box, copies your product, copies everything, names it like with one syllable off and puts it there. That's not great. Yeah, I can, I wish people would do better, but what are you going to do?
I'm a huge fan of the idea of community over competition for sure, but I fully get where you're coming from, that it takes all types to make the world. I want to just circle back really quickly. If someone does want to work with you, what are the kinds of roles that you may currently be hiring for, or what are the kinds of people that you want should apply? Do you want to give your HR a little bit of aid by doing a little shout out for anything you might need help for in the foreseeable future?
That's so sweet. We're always interested in hearing from people who might want to work with us. So yeah, please reach out. You can write to community@leezuz.com. And I think that, at different times we're hiring for different positions, but if there's a genuine I think what's really hard to find is a combination of the creative and the interest in sexuality and sex ed and an understanding of numbers, data, analytics. Often people have either or. And I really, really value in people who have both. I know it's a big ask, but if you care passionately about sexual health and rights, and you also can understand numbers and data and make projections and read spreadsheets, I definitely want to hear from you.
You know where to apply if you have that combination. Do you sometimes think that, again, people may hesitate to apply because of family, like they'll go back home and say, I work for a pleasure brand? That must be another issue where so many applications may be getting held back. I'm just thinking about it as you were speaking.
Maybe, dude, but beyond a point, like I can't, if you're uncomfortable and you want to pander to your family for the rest of your life, like that's your journey. Luckily, there's so many people whose parents don't even care. And two, my office is full of people, right? And there's people, they're making videos they're in our videos. They're like, it's a bit of a journey. Sometimes on day one, they're a bit like, the parents might know, but they're like, okay, maybe I don't want to be in content and stuff. I'm just working in whatever, logistics. But before you know it, like they're so excited about it's hard not to be excited about what we do once you're with us, because it's so much fun. And the feedback we get there's just like, I think in a very personal way, if you could eliminate all the forces around you that tell you can't talk about this, can't like this, can't want to be part of this, it's such a liberating, joyful thing to like let go of shame and to be in a workplace where you're not expected to feel it. We have 90% women also at Leezuz. And like to see so many of these people I've witnessed in the last 2 years go on such a journey, like from being a little bit reticent about the stuff to like talking about butt plugs to a potential manufacturer to like being, talking about like fingering techniques on our Instagram or whatever. Like there's I think you realize so quickly how all these, the surveillance and control mechanisms in a patriarchal society that are enforced by so many people, including your family, including your own. Like even I have internalized misogyny, probably still. Okay, there's things that we all have to unlearn like every day. It's not like I'm not the perfect feminist by any means. Who is? I still like get my hair removed and think I have to and whatever. So many things that are imperfect about my feminism. But that awakening of like, hey, My body is mine. It is okay to experience desire and joy in my sexuality. Like, it is a free world and I deserve orgasms. When that penny drops, it's like such a beautiful thing to witness. And most people who work with us, that penny drops and then they spread it. Like, there's something to be said for the energy of a woman who has let go of shame. And then it is often an invitation to so many others in her life to also let go of shame when she brings that energy into a space. And so that, yeah, I just, like, it's been so heartening to see that with my team.
Your eyes light up when you talk about the products and the passion.
Thank you.
It shows. And I think that that's beautiful. The passion that you have with just normalizing this, taking the stigma out of the topic.
I love my team. Like, we have some amazing people, and like, they've moved here for the job. They've come from small town, and the journey from like being a bit publicly wary of like how to say I work for the sex store and how to tell my extended family, to like being our biggest cheerleaders, like not just being vocal, but being so proud. It makes me so happy.
If you had to make a suggestion for one toy for someone who's never tried toys before, what's that one product you're going to plug to them? I know you gifted me Bijli today, so thank you for that. But I
really do like Bijli for a first-time toy user, or lipstick, because they're toys that you can use externally, and they're powerful enough that you don't even have to take your clothes off. So any vibrator can typically be used for clitoral stimulation, and vibration or suction against the clitoris is like the game-changing thing that a toy can provide. I feel like while I love a good dildo, technically a penis or a finger or something, it can also provide internal stimulation relatively effectively. But the speed, consistency, and intensity of stimulation against the clitoris that a toy can provide is like not humanly possible unless this dude is like so good at cunnilingus or fingering and he's like dedicated and he is at it for a really long time, or woman or whatever, right? I feel like that most people are just not sufficiently skillful or committed to provide the degree, consistency, and amount of stimulation required. Whereas a toy is literally designed for that. It's like if you needed to make nimbu pani for 10 people, you could be sitting there squeezing the lemons with your hands. But doesn't it make it so much easier to have a nimbu nichodne ka wo? You know, it's just a tool. It exists. We all use it. The nimbu pani gets done better. Clitoral stimulation with a sex toy is just, it's like you've been fucking making your nimbu pani with your hands all these years, and now you get this thing and the seeds aren't in there and it's just juice. It is amazing.
I'm just clapping for this.
Yeah, it's just
for this
so
metaphor.
Good, I'm telling you. And you can use it during sex. A sex toy during intercourse. Clitoral stimulation from a toy during penetration is like life-altering. I swear to God, life-altering.
Your eyes light up.
Because,
I love to watch this.
Like, it is so good. I know I can like moan for you right now. No, it's really, really something else. Like, you got to try it.
So you're recommending which one for a first-time user?
I really like Bijli for a first-time user. Because as I said, if in case you're uncomfortable with the idea of masturbation and you haven't yet warmed up to it, you can even use it over your clothes. You just hold it in the general region, the upper vulva region where the clitoris is, and you're probably going to feel that pleasantness of that stimulation. It is literally a massager in that regard. It's almost like, you know, you're not having to get naked or make direct contact or put anything inside. I think a lot of people have like a fear of penetration, especially if they haven't yet had sex or whatever. But my personal favorite toy, and I think also beginners can use it, but it does require more direct application, is Pyari, which is a suction device, especially for partnered play. Since I talk about using a toy during sex, I would say that the clitoral stimulator Pyari that we have is really nice for inclusion during penetration with a partner.
I love the names. Do you know, I tell my son to give me lovey or give me pyari, and now when I go home and say that to him, I'm
sorry to spoil that for you.
I don't know the visual yet. I'm going to go home and
Google it. It's a very cute, little, sweet little device. It looks like a Among Us. You know, the little, it looks like, it's very cute. It's like blue with a little pink opening.
Okay, don't leave the men out. If you were going to make a recommendation to a male viewer, what are you recommending for them to get?
Oh, we have these strokers called Tufan and Tufan Intense.
Who is naming all of this? I love it.
But now we get the whole team also to chip in. Like, which do we like? Which do we like? Friends, family, team. Everyone likes the naming process. We have a vibrator called Jadugar that's also, it does as the name suggests. That's an internal toy though. But for men, the Tufan strokers are really fun. They simulate the experience of oral or intercourse. Like one of them feels more like oral and one of them feels more like intercourse. The textures are different and the level of snugness also differs. But yeah, people love, those are two of our best-selling products for men. And the material is just so uniquely squishy and soft and like very nice. So I think there's a lot of men, because we police young people's sexuality so intensely, especially pre-marriage.
They wanted more.
And no, well, I mean, maybe, but there's so many young people, and young is also a relative term, okay? I'm talking late 20s even, who are unmarried, especially men. As income and education increase, what's quite interesting in India is that age of marriage has, as one can imagine, gotten later and later, okay? But unfortunately, it also means that men are only able to access sex like quite late, like 28 or 30 is like quite late. Do you know what I mean? In most countries, people are having their first sexual experience. Not most countries, but in many countries, people are having access to sex at a much younger age. And it's part of, when you experience puberty and you experience all of these things that you do as a young adult, your first crush, and it's quite normal to want to act on that. But when you have such strict surveillance and control and no education, and what are you doing? Like, you're watching porn. We have like generations of sad, lonely men with zero access to actual intimacy or affection or emotional connection with a woman or and they're just watching porn all day. And so I feel like we shouldn't police this as much as we do. It would be nice to equip young people with education, information, and enable a healthier attitude to sexuality. But also there's so many men who just have so much FOMO. Like I've never had sex, I've never had a blowjob, I've never like experienced any of the things I'm curious about. What does it feel like? And also they have like this very like just use their hand to masturbate, like and it's over. And I think that the toy simulates some experiences that people might wish they had access to, but also like you have to clean the toy. You have to it's like it adds a kind of dimension to your self-pleasure routine that requires a little bit more effort and thought. And like I think that, I don't know, I would hope that by incorporating a toy into solo play, you also allow for a certain degree of mindfulness, asking yourself questions about what feels good and what doesn't, and that you might not have done so yet,
Are you manufacturing from end to end? Like, are you guys internally designing the product and manufacturing it? How does that process work?
We're working on manufacturing in India right now. I hope that works out. We've been working with manufacturers in China for a lot of our existing products, although we make our loops here. But yeah, Make in India is a special project for me. It's very early days and it's a process because the infrastructure doesn't exist here. China is the sex toy capital of the world. China is like the make most things capital of the world. Manufacturing in China is really hard to compete with. And I think people have some people who like don't follow manufacturing or brands or commerce in a close way still have this like ancient perception of made in China equals bad or low quality. That's not true. Some of the best products in the world across categories, including luxury brands, including fashion, including like you name it, it is probably being made in China. And the quality is incredible. And very hard to compete with. Most American and European brands also make in China. Yeah. So people have this mistaken perception that they're bad. No, it's great, but it would be so much. One, I want to make in India, proud to make in India. But two, supply chain would be much quicker. And also I'd have much more control. So yeah, that's a huge priority.
Okay. Anything else you want to plug about the brand before we go to my last segment?
No, let's go.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I love the passion that shines out of your eyes when you talk about the products. So it's infectious. It really is. So we end all episodes with a little segment called Hot or Not.
Okay.
It's a yay or nay, hot or not, whatever you'd like to call it. I have a little black over here to give you.
Thank you.
Me trying to give it without moving my mic.
Okay, so
and you tell me whether you agree or disagree with the thought. Hot or Not with Leeza Mangaldas. Using slang instead of real anatomy in sex talks with kids.
Oh man, are we going to get all these serious questions? I feel like they don't have yes or no answers.
You can give a little bit of a context to it as well.
I think it's nice to tell young people and kids especially without giving special treatment to the genitals. When you're saying the names, like, the way you'd say eyes, nose, whatever, I think it is nice in whatever language you're educating. I think it is nice for them to know that this is a speakable word. This is what it's called. And it's just a body part. And And then if you have maybe you have like how you're saying, you say lovey for a kiss or something. It's sweet to have your own cute terms with your kid, by all means. But I think too, some parents will teach them shame as a word for the genitals. Is that anything to teach a kid? Shame? Seriously? That's still a thing, And I think also you need to, one might be like, why does a 2-year-old need to know or whatever? But in age appropriate ways at every stage in the journey, it is an opportunity to have these conversations in the way that will suit that young person at that age. I mean, let's say good touch, bad touch. That's a conversation you need to have pretty young. Yeah. As soon as your kid can talk, they deserve to understand from you that certain things are not to be done in public, or if someone tries to do this and this in this and this ways, and you can explain in gentle, kind, and not ways that like startle or alarm the child, but just to know that like these are things only mama can do, or like, however you explain to your child. I think that you need to empower them to be able to tell you also, right?
Yeah.
Or like if something's itchy or they need to see a doctor about something, even then they should have the vocabulary to tell you which part of their body is itching or bleeding or hurting or whatever, right? And just like they can tell you if they have an earache, they should be able to tell you if something's up with their genitals.
Yeah.
So I think we should teach them the language, and then you can have your own language also, but don't make it seem like this is not speakable and also this is bad, or, and I think another experience that parents will often have is walking in on their kid like self-stimulating in some way. Very young even, I mean, fetuses have been known to touch their own genitals in the womb. Now, it's not always sexual. Like touching your genitals is like a self-soothing behavior that even very, very young children will be found doing. Or you might see a kid like, whatever, just being curious about their body, or like touching their poop. Kids do this. It's not the end of the world. And I think if you slap the kid or lock them up or like do some disproportionate punishment to what is actually just a very normal either act of curiosity or self-soothing, you really like, the stuff is where this shame comes from. This is why they're not going to tell you when the one thing they actually need is help or support, and who better than you, who is more invested in your kid's well-being than you, the parent, right? If your kid ever had a problem in any department, whether even something as little as heartbreak or whatever, or an infection, whatever, 20, 30, at whatever age, why is it that they can't come to you? Most people are not going to go to their parents. And isn't that sad? Like, it is nice to be able to trust that your parents are going to be unconditional in their love for you and reliable in their support of you and your health and etc.
Yeah.
So I really think parents need to do a better job.
As a new parent, this is a conversation I've had with my husband, and I was like, I don't know if I want to. I have a boy, and I was like, I know that I want to be able to tell him that, okay, this is your penis. Nobody should touch it. The whole good touch, bad touch thing. And it's something that I've gone back and forth on only because I'm like, I also don't want to land up making anybody around feel uncomfortable. And then I'm like, no, wait. Why should I make anybody feel uncomfortable with teaching my child about his own organs? Like that shouldn't be a thing. So there's so much of...
We so often worry about others. And in India particularly, it's like, log kya kahenge is more important than your kid.
Yeah.
Dude, people kill their kids. What is wrong with you people? Sometimes I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Look, like, who cares about the neighbors or anyone? Like, you, as a parent, you have failed if you care about anyone more than your kid. I'm sorry. If you care about anyone else more than your kid, you shouldn't have been a parent.
It's one of those things where, I don't know whether I watched this on which show or a movie where they teach the child to say penis and then he goes to school and then the other child says it. I can't remember where I watched this. And then, somebody else's mom becomes angry because they're like, oh, we hadn't taught him that. But I'm like, isn't that the whole thing? Like, to normalize these words. And I hope I'm able to. I'm saying it now, but I have a very small child. He's only 7 months old.
But you know what? I think parents need to figure out, I hate to be a rule giver. Okay. Aisa hi karna, aisa hi karo. No, I mean, I can say maybe I wish we lived in a world where we could teach the scientifically accurate terms. But if in your community and your school and whatever you think it's going to do more harm than good to teach the accurate terms, teach whatever term works for you, but do so in a way that does not convey shame, judgment, fear, and like I think it's the tone and the openness, and it's between you and your kid. Like, who's going to know your kid better than you?
Yeah, that's true.
But I think like making it something they can talk about with you, making it something that's comfortable and not shame-laden, then whatever word you want to use.
I think our generation will change that, hopefully.
I hope so.
I really hope so. Wait, can you throw up the plaque for yes or no? Because it's obviously no. But
it was like you can like use whatever language you want. Just don't like
attach shame to it. talking about pleasure in sex education.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Censorship of women's nipples on Instagram versus allowing men's bodies to be seen.
I mean, not like I'm dying to show anyone my nipples, but like...
Schools avoiding the topic of menstruation for boys.
Oh, I don't know why they do that. I was hoping by now that they teach everybody. Yeah, but I guess some schools still don't.
Using social media as the main source for sex ed for teens.
I really think these conversations need to happen at home as well and in school. You know, the reason we're doing this on social media is because the people who ought to be delivering this aren't. Why are your kids learning from some stranger on the internet? Do a better job. Yeah.
Porn as a sex ed tool?
I think, porn was meant to be adult entertainment. You need to have some amount of context, nuance, media literacy, ideally even experience before. Like I would think if you were learning how to drive, you wouldn't do so by watching The Fast and the Furious, right? That's the analogy most of us sex educators like to give about learning about sex from porn. I'm not saying all porn is bad or like, you know, there's porn now that's trying to be feminist or that's produced by the actor themselves on a platform like OnlyFans, which cuts out all middlemen. And there's porn and there's porn and there's porn. I'm not here in this conversation. That's a whole other debate about like the ethics of porn and what's okay and what's not okay and all of that. But the fact is most young people learn about sex from porn. And so I think parents, schools say we need better alternatives and we need to provide context because they will, in the internet era, your kid is going to watch porn at some point and they might as well have the understanding that that's not always real life and that's not like they need some context, you know?
Using body count as a relationship filter.
No.
Using scare tactics to talk about STDs. Celebrities giving sex advice.
Yeah, sure. I mean, especially if it's only if it's scientifically accurate and judgment free.
Assuming sexual experience equals sexual confidence.
No, you know, I think actually, no matter how much experience you've already had, when two people have sex for the first time, they really come into it with the same amount of experience because they've never had sex with each other. And it's such a subjective thing, what somebody likes and what they're okay with and what they're not. And you really have to understand each other's boundaries and pleasure and everything, you know, from the beginning. Even if you've had sex before, you've not had sex with that person before. So even if they've had less sex than you, you've had less, it doesn't really matter. You need to like come into it with the openness and willingness to understand each other. That you would every single, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's completely new.
Yeah.
Listen, you've been so open and amazing through this conversation. I want to say thank you. I hope that everyone watching is really able to take away the idea of normalizing conversations like these and why creators like these actually need to be followed more, probably, because these are real life things impacting so much about our sense of self, about interpersonal relationships. And I'm going to go ahead and link in the ones you suggested from Leeza's down below. So make sure you go check that out for yourself, I guess. I have a little thank you for you. Wait, I almost forgot.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you for like having this conversation. You know, I'm really delighted that not once, but twice you've had me in conversation. And it's so lovely that you like also do in your way care about this.
Of course I do. And I'm constantly trying to unlearn myself, trying to take away the stigma from it in whatever way and capacity I can. So thank you for coming on twice. You've been on my channel before too.
Thank you for having me.
Yay.
I can't wait to try this.
Yeah,
Congratulations
I hope you like
on everything you're building with Verify.
Thank you. Thank you so much.